Hello there, it's time to catch up on the models I've painted that were sent into the now incredibly closed PO box. First up is a 1987 Chainsaw Warrior that was sent in by Cameron. These were first released to tie into the card game of the same name, but were later released again under the 40k banner, since I suppose between the chainsaw weapon and its vaguely potato-y head sculpt, it fit right in with early 40k. Went with a green colour scheme on him because green just felt normal for some reason. That reason is probably me remembering these bits of promotional material. Also did something a little different on the base that made me bust out the masking tape to get a straight line, so that's always fun. Next up we have some non-Citadel miniatures that were sent in by Ed Fortune. First are a trio of T800s from River Horse's Terminator Genesis game. Not sure why they're specifically branded to Genesis and not just, Terminator as a franchise, but licensing deals are often strange and arcane things beyond mortal comprehension. It's probably best not to ask. These are simple little models and, given their canonical colour scheme, took very little time to paint as it was mostly just a couple of layers of silver dry brush. The one missing his legs isn't normally on a base, but I put him on a spare D&D mini base because those are about the same size and I thought I'd only lose him if he didn't have a little bit more substance to him. Oh, and if you were wondering how they scale to 40k's resident silver skeletons, well, there you go. They're kinda small. Also from Ed was a Warcradle Studios K9 attack dog. Hoomst is a very good boy. I decided to paint this robot Pooch up in bronze and silver, and in doing so inadvertently gave him a little bit of a metallic corgi vibe. I'm okay with it. It's originally from a game called Wild West Exodus, but I'm not really familiar with that, I'm afraid. It did, however, have the most astonishingly vibrant sprue. Seriously, you are not losing any pieces of this when you drop it on the carpet, you cannot miss it. Tried to do a glowy effect on the eyes and a bit on the chest, but the orange blended into the bronze a bit too much. Should have probably done it in blue or something, but hey, sometimes things aren't perfect, and that's okay. From Zingbo was this Space Marine medic, because it took a while before they started to get fancy and call them apothecaries. Since my force is based on the earlier end of Rogue Trader, I based his colour scheme on the ones shown in the original medic article, mostly this ultramarine one, but I put my own spin on it. Quite proud of the era-appropriate graffiti on his leg, not just because it's very small, but because normally when I do graffiti on these I just take something from an existing studio model or some artwork of the time, because I find it kinda hard to actually replicate the tone of that stuff. But Kill or Cure just seemed to fit the tone really well, so, I'm happy. Also on the Lamenter's front, I painted this Vindicator, which is based off a resin recast rhino sent in by Patrick. If you're wondering if there's any way to tell it's a recast just from a glance, well, if you look really closely, you can see that the roof is slightly bowed, since the resin it's made of isn't as rigid as the original plastic. Although it should be noted that the rear door is actually an authentic piece from the Predator kit of that time. This conversion is based on the original Vindicator conversion from White Dwarf back in Rogue Trader, although I basically just made my own version since the conversion was oddly complex considering it's basically just slap a gun on a rhino. Although for the most part I did use parts and techniques that I could have used at the time, so it kept within the theme. Well, okay, except for the barrel because I didn't have any tubing of that size, so I just grabbed one I had left over from building a shadow sword. The V symbol on its back comes from the Blood Angel's specific icon for a Vindicator that was in that White Dwarf issue. It's also the product of a lot of masking tape. And the text on the barrel, the one big one, is a nod to the classic bit of art from the Rogue Trader rulebook that's always amused me because of how awkward that phrase feels. Since the last video, I also got back into painting a bit of my Grot Rebellion, and did a handful of the little green buggers, including some that have been sent in. The first three here are all Gorka Morka Grots sent in by Mike, Cameron, and I'm not sure. Sorry, I didn't keep a detailed list of who sent what as this sister series wasn't initially planned, and there's hours and hours of mailbag footage to go through, so if you were the one who sent this particular grot in, then please let me know in the comments so I can say thank you in the description. Anyway, the other two are also notable since they're the first finished Rebel Grots in my Grot mob, and by that I mean they're the only ones that I've painted that were originally sold under the name of Rebel Grots in the Gorka Morka line. and so have those little stars on them to distinguish them as such. I also have a Makari who was sent in by a generous nameless entity, and as this one was sent in on his own without a Gazkul, he's going to be the standard bearer for my upsettingly large mob of goblins. The flag was made from scratch out of plasticard and was something I'd not really tried to do at this scale before, and as such it's not very dynamic, but hey, your first attempt at something is never going to be perfect. The Orcish runes on the flag read "No Gorks" on one side and "No Morks" on the other, as a reference to the phrase "No Gods, No Masters," and as a testament to my predilection for committing myself to painting fake letters very small. Finally, I have the test model for another little project that I've started, and therefore gets in the way of all the other little projects I'm currently doing, and will itself be displaced by whatever I get it into my head to make next, as ever it was. Anyway, this new project is Bretonnian-themed Stormcast. The base model I used to make him was from a kit sent in by George, and I also need to mention Drummer Matt, who gave me a bunch of Bretonnian parts that inspired this. And it's astonishing how much of a different look you can get from one of these by just swapping out the head, shaving the detail off the shield, and giving it a more traditionally knightly paint job. And yes, this one is inspired by the Howling Griffins, it's not a coincidence. Not sure if I want to add more detail to the heraldry in the future. I think it would look good, but I've got a bunch more of these to work on, so I'll probably keep it simple for now. I can always elaborate on them later. Oh, and yeah, I'm putting these things on square bases. It's pure whimsy on my part, don't read anything more into it than that. I just thought it'd be fun if these World That Was themed minis carried that over into their bases too. So that's what I've painted from the mailbag since last time. As ever, I got quite distracted by different things, so there's a lot I worked on but just didn't get around to finishing, but it'll get done eventually. A massive thank you to everyone who sent in the models that were featured in this video. It is very much appreciated. And I shall see you all back here in, I don't know, however long it takes me to paint another batch of models.